you guys? Welcome back to It's Bonus, a podcast. I am so glad that you're here. If this is your first time listening to one of these episodes, welcome. But first, I would encourage you to go and listen to last week's episode because today we're continuing that conversation. We're talking about just trusting in the Lord in seasons of waiting. And today we're going to talk about more seasons of waiting, but this time more like seasons of change, and what relationships are going to look like in those seasons of change and where our heart is changed and fixated on the Lord. So go listen to that one and then come back and join us for this conversation on relationships. So I'm really excited to get into this episode because I really like talking about this because I think that this is something that isn't really, it's kind of not taboo, but it's just something that isn't talked about very much. And it's that when our hearts change and when we go from this lukewarm or a non-Christian to giving our life to the Lord and choosing to follow Him, relationships change. Whether that's your family, your friend group, your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or any encounter with another human being, like your whole world gets flipped upside down. And that can be scary, but it's actually really good and it's really exciting. And so that's just what we're going to talk about today. And I'm just really excited. But before we dive into that, I want to share with you guys a voice memo that I recorded a couple days ago. Actually, I think it was about a week ago. And I was just standing in my kitchen and I was thinking about surrender. I'm talking about it this weekend and I've just kind of been preparing for it, praying over it. And I'm like, am I truly surrendered in all areas of my life? And the short answer is no, I am not. But I was trying to figure out why. Like, why does it feel so hard sometimes to surrender things? And why do I feel like I have to have control over everything? And so I'm going to share with you guys my random thoughts when I was just standing in the kitchen. And I think the audio is kind of bad, but we'll just play it by ear. Okay.
Standing, realize, okay, this is for future Addie at some point. I just kind of had this realization, this understanding of why I feel like I'm constantly chasing success and never letting the Lord take over. Like, just as somebody that's wanting to start a business, wanting to start a career, I feel like I just can't ever get to the point where I'm fully surrendered to the Lord. And I say that this is for Him and I'm going to let Him take over. I'm going to let Him do what He does. And I think it's because I have this mentality that I don't even realize I have. And it's that the Lord saved me. The Lord gave His life for me on a cross. After I betrayed Him over and over and over again, He continued to save me, and He still wrapped His arms around me just out of pure love. And I feel like the least I could do is bring glory to His name on my own. The least I could do is build something where people fall on their knees for Him, build a community of people. The least I could do is do this on my own. And I wish I didn't feel that way, but I think that that's the root of this. I think that's what's blocking my surrender. Anyway.
Okay, so yeah, I recorded that last week Friday, and I think it's just this idea of feeling that I need to repay the Lord without even actually saying that out loud. Like, just I don't know, I don't know that there's a better way to say this, but like, I feel like I put Him through the ringer. I feel like I put Him through hell. Like, just watching me betray Him and choose myself over Him. Like, I feel like the least I could do for Him is to be successful. The least I could do is bring glory to His name. And while that's true and that's what my mission is, like, He did that because He loves me, and He didn't do that because He needed me to, because I owe Him or because I need to repay Him. He did it because He truly loves me. And so if you're somebody that is struggling with like letting go of something and feeling like you have to have control over it, and maybe it's from a good place of like, well, because the Lord did this for me and I want to repay Him, just know that He did that out of pure love and expects absolutely nothing in return. And that's just kind of the beauty of being a believer and being a Christian, is the fact that He gives you this love. He gives you this grace and this mercy every single day and doesn't expect anything in return for it. And I just think that that's so beautiful, and it's so hard to accept it, but it's so good. And so, I don't know. If you're just somebody struggling with that, I hope that that's a little bit of an encouragement for you. But anyway, that's kind of what we're talking about today, but not really. We're more so talking about relationships. And I'm excited because this is just an interesting topic. So let's just dive right in. Okay, I heard you. Consistency in our Bibles might just be the hardest thing to get a grip on. Between our busy schedules, our preoccupied brains, and the amount of distractions that we face day to day, it almost feels impossible to have a consistent and a clear understanding of God's Word. So, I'd like to introduce you guys to our new guide, All Who Have Ears. This is an ebook, and it's going to inspire you to get in your Word with 5 things to think about when approaching the Word and dozens of actionable steps towards doing so. This guide might just be your solution to finding consistency on the daily. So head over to theabundantco.net to grab your copy today. So this is kind of going along with the voice memo, and it's just a surrendered heart. So I want to kind of paint the scene here, and let's say that you just decided to follow Jesus. You are a new believer and you have decided to go all in for him. Or maybe you're not a new believer, but you have decided, you know what? I am so sick of the lukewarm Jesus stuff. I want to go all in for him because I love him and I know him and I want him to be Lord over my life. You just decided to step into a state of surrender. Or you have to step into a state of surrender, because to be a follower of Christ doesn't mean that you can cling on to anything. You can't cling on to, just this area of my life, just this little area of my life. No, you have to give it over to the Lord. And that's something that I am learning every single day. So I'm not ahead of you. I'm not already gone through this. I'm going through this with you. And it's so hard to let the Lord be Lord over your life. It is so freaking hard. Like, I just think about all the areas of my life. For so long I was like, oh yeah, of course the Lord is. He is king. He rules over that area of my life, whether that's, for me, the very first few things were I let him be Lord over my life when it came to my body image. I let him be Lord over my life when it came to school. That came early on in high school. I was like, Lord, I have to let you do this. Like, I can't control, I can only control so much of my grades. And I don't mean that he's going to, do my test for me, but to let him have control over my future was kind of more of the root of that. And yeah, that was a big deal. And I think about all of those big life choices. Yes, I went all in for Jesus. I let him rule over this area of my life. And then bam, suddenly I realize that I'm still trying to control how much money I make and how successful I am and this business that I want to start and just all this stuff. I still think that I have so much control over my life, and it has really been a roadblock and a barrier, but a strengthener, in my walk with the Lord. Because over these last few years of being all in for Jesus, he has revealed and shown me so many areas of my life that I'm not all in for him. And yes, that has been hard. Yes, that has been extremely difficult, and I have wanted to never follow Jesus again, because it just feels humbling and scary and all the things. Following Jesus is difficult, but never once did I turn around. Never once did I turn around, because, it says in that verse that nothing can pluck you from the Father's hands. And that is so true, because no matter how many times my flesh wanted to return to what I knew, the Lord held me so secure in his hands. He strengthened me. My goodness, I can't speak today. He strengthened me through those seasons of fear of what's next, of confusion of why I still felt so anxious about this season or about this circumstance. And he strengthened me through that and showed me how to surrender. So I have my notes pulled up on my phone here. And with a surrendered heart, okay? So back to our picture, back to our scene, you have decided to go all in for Jesus. So you have decided to surrender your heart. With a surrendered heart, a heart that is laid at the altar, laid before the Lord, is going to view the world differently than a heart that seeks the approval of those around him, takes their own circumstances into their own hands, and overall is confused about their purpose. We as believers, we as followers of Christ, we that have decided to go all in for Jesus are going to have a different view of things. And that affects our conversations, that affects our relationships. 1 Corinthians 16:14 through 18, I'm just going to read a few verses, says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial?" And I think that's how you say it, and that word actually means demons. Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has a temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God said, "I will make my dwelling among them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people." So what this verse is saying is not necessarily that you have to cut off those relationships. So don't take this the wrong way. But I think that when it comes to a surrendered heart, and it comes to somebody that is all in for the Lord, those relationships, whether it's a family relationship, a friend relationship, or a spouse, or not a spouse, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you aren't equally yoked in that your spiritual maturity isn't aligned with each other, that relationship is going to change. And it's not a matter of what you did or what he did or she did. It's that the Lord came in and changed your heart. And so you're going to view things differently. Your view on politics, your view on whatever, like, yes, that's not necessarily what matters. But ultimately, to be in a relationship where you're unequally yoked is going to be difficult. And I think about, like, even just a friend, like somebody that I grew up with, like a family friend or somebody that was really close with me. And when I chose to give my life to Jesus, that relationship changed significantly. And yes, it was difficult, but if you're all in for Jesus, again, your view is going to change. You're going to see things with a lens of all for his glory. And you don't have to cut that person off. You don't have to not engage with that person because he didn't call you to that. But what I think this verse is saying is that you can't have such a close and personal connection with this person and with this world if you're trying to have a close and personal connection with the creator and savior of the world. I think it's so interesting. It says, "I will make my dwelling place among them and walk among them. I will be their God and they shall be my people." Like, he wants to dwell in your heart, and God wants to be Lord over your life. He wants to be the savior of your entire story. He already wrote it. Now let him be a part of that. And it's so hard because we don't want to let go of things. And so if you're all in for Jesus, I just want you to hear that he needs your whole heart. He needs your surrendered life. He needs you to lay it at the altar, every area of it. When we choose to follow Jesus, he's going to begin to prune those areas of our life and the things in our life that are not righteous and holy. We talked about pruning a while back, and I love this imagery of, like, he has produced you and I. Let's say we are the flowers or we are the fruit or whatever, and then these weeds wither and they kind of grow up the stem and up the roots, and the Lord comes by and he's pulling those out, and he's making you into this gorgeous, beautiful, flourishing flower. And that's his love for us. That is his plan for us. That is his desire for us, is to be this made new product of his salvation, product of his creation. And in order to do that, he needs your whole heart because he gave you a free will. And, those weeds, and this is so hard to say, but like sometimes those weeds are those people. And it is those relationships because he knows that one friend that you went through middle school and high school with and you were really close with, and they were just a really good friend, they're not going to be good in this season of life for you. And that's where the trusting comes in. It's trusting that whatever it is that he has for you, whatever pruning he has for you, to know that it is good. And I made note of this because I think that you have to know this, is that God is for you. He's not against you. But so if God is for you, who can be against you? If you know that God is for you and you know that he is thinking of you, and when he wrote that story and he made that plan for your life, that he thought of you and he has your favor in mind, he's not going to just go by and start plucking the leaves. No, he's pulling the weeds. Not the leaves, the weeds. He's pulling things that are not good for you. I think sometimes that this idea of God plucking or pruning people of our lives kind of makes him seem like a thief, like he's some bad, big, and scary God, but he's not. That's not what he's doing. He's plucking what's not going to prosper, what isn't going to bring fruit, because he loves you and he wants only what is good and what will produce fruit. If we understand that this idea of pruning is coming from a heart of him just wanting to make us new, him wanting to give us a changed heart and a new way of living, and then we can see this as a good thing. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. That doesn't mean that when those relationships fall out, or maybe even, I feel for the person that maybe has had a relationship with a guy for a really long time. Maybe you've been in a long, say 2 or 3 year long relationship, and it has been good in the eyes of the world, and it has been satisfying to the flesh, and you encounter Jesus and you decide that you want to live a life in full submission to him. I feel for you, because it's likely that there is conflict or tension in that relationship, because suddenly you've decided that you're going to submit to somebody higher than the world. You're submitting to the creator of the world and not just the creation. And that's hard. That's like, I don't even have an answer to that, except that the Lord has always been faithful. He is always good, and he has this promise that he is going to bring good to those who are righteous, to those that are all in, to those that choose him and love him and want to know him. I asked over on my Instagram a couple weeks ago, when we go through seasons of change, what is like the hardest thing that you deal with or struggle with? And somebody said, how and when to start acting more mature around people you're comfortable with. And at first I was kind of confused by this question, how and when to start acting more mature around people you're comfortable with? Well, now, right? Because you're comfortable with them. But then I kind of put myself into these shoes of how and when to start acting more maybe spiritually mature with people that you're already comfortable with. So then I'm thinking, okay, you are in the world, you don't know Jesus, and you have this friend group, and you're really comfortable with them, and you get along with them, you go hang out with them, you go to parties with them, and they know you. They know you as who you are of the world. And years go by, and you're still friends, you guys are still good, you're still hanging out, and you meet Jesus. And not just meet him, but you choose to follow him. And suddenly, you have this maturity, this spiritual maturity that makes you glow and light up, and you're changed. You are a new woman or a new guy, and you have the light of Christ in you. But as soon as you're around that friend or that friend group, you don't know how to act. And you don't want to be two-faced, but that's kind of what it is, right? Like, you want to be accepted and loved as you have been for that whole time that you spent with them in middle school or high school or whatever. The whole time that they knew you, you have been made new. And now what? Now you're supposed to be this new person. What if they don't like you? What if they don't accept you? What if they don't like your way of living? I'm not trying to say that this is going to be easy, but my initial response to this, the question is how and when. Well, your when is now. Because you can't wait around. You can't wait around for them to be like, yes, we'll accept you as you are. No, you have to start now. You have to start living like you are living for Christ right now. And how? I think that depends. That's a tricky question. How do you start living for Christ? You're living out your salvation. You're living in freedom. You're showing them that you don't need to party to feel satisfied or to feel loved. You're showing them that you walk with a spirit of joy, with the Spirit, with all those fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control. I think I missed one: gentleness. You walk with that because you know Christ. And that in and of itself is how. I don't think that there's anything that we have to do to show the people that we love that we know Christ or that we've been changed. Because if you've been changed and if you choose to follow Jesus, He has made you new, and you have this new life, this new glow. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Jesus glow, but it's so real. Like, when people meet Jesus and encounter Jesus, there's just this joy. And so I think your how is by living out your salvation. Let me find that verse. You guys, you're never going to believe it. We are approaching the 1-year anniversary of my book, This Isn't You. This book is my story from death to life. I take you through my journey with anorexia nervosa and my recovery process and encountering Jesus through all of it. We have perspectives from both my parents, my siblings, and myself. And since we're practically family over here, I'd like to give all of the podcast listeners a little discount. So use code podcast10 over on our website for 10% off all books and ebooks. This includes This Isn't You and our new digital guide, All Who Have Ears. So again, head over to theabundantco.net, use code podcast10 for 10% off at checkout. Yeah, Philippians 2:12-13 says, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you both to will and to do for His good pleasure." Notice how Paul doesn't say work for your own salvation, but work out your own salvation. He doesn't need you to do anything. You've already earned salvation. You didn't earn salvation. You've already been given salvation. You don't need to work for salvation. You need to work out your salvation. And it says work out salvation with fear and trembling, and not literal fear and trembling, but fear of the Lord, because He is an almighty, all-powerful God. We can't work for our salvation, so the how doesn't necessarily exist, because if you're for Jesus and you're all in for Jesus, you just have to work out your salvation. It's clear that God's salvation comes from His grace through faith in Jesus, not by your works. I think when it comes to those relationships, I don't think the Lord wants us to get rid of them. I don't think He wants us to be like, we're not equally yoked, so I can't be friends with you. But I think He wants us to go to Him and say, Lord, how can you work in me to show that I have been saved and redeemed? Can you show this changed heart to them? Because I want them to see you through me. And that's all I want, no matter what it is, Lord. I want to go in which way you direct me. I want to go down the path that you have for me. And I want to trust you in that without even seeing what's coming next. That's the thing, is that we don't even get to see what He has in store for us. But choosing Jesus, fully surrendered, laying it before the altar, is believing and trusting that whatever path He has for us is good. And it might hurt, and that pruning might hurt, whatever it is that He is pulling from your life. But trusting that He's going to put you in the right place with the right people at the right time, in order to show that you have been saved, redeemed, and abundantly loved. Because if our goal in life is to live a life all for Jesus, always pointing back to the cross and his finished work, we have to go to him and we have to ask him how and where and when we can do that, and trust that he's going to put us in the right place at the right time. And honestly, you guys, like when it comes to the pruning of the people and losing friends, losing relationships, or relationships getting like less deep or less serious, like just talk to him and tell him how you feel. Tell him that there is this anxiety inside of you because you want to be loved by the world still. Because there's always going to be a piece of our flesh, because we're still flesh, that desires to be loved by the world. But ask God for that freedom. Ask him, like, something that I've prayed for a while now is just that, like, I want to be directed in the feeling of peace and understanding from the Lord, and not loved and accepted by the world. And as much as a piece of my heart still desires that, to be fully surrendered to the Lord and to be able to talk to him like he's my best friend, because he literally is, gives me that peace. Like, if you come before the Lord and you truly want what he wants for you, and you truly want to see the story unfold that he has for your life, he's not going to withhold it. He's not a sneaky thief. He's not. He's the complete opposite. He wants to be open with you. He wants to show you, but also he wants you to trust him. He wants you to humble yourselves. He wants to humble your pride and show you that he has authority. And he's a good person. He's a good thing to have in the driver's seat. He's a good person to have in authority over our lives. So I guess my final thoughts is just that if you're somebody that is struggling, or somebody that's walking through a season of change and relationships are changing, to lean in. Take this as a sign, as a message from the Lord, to lean in. Stop trying to stand on your own. I don't know why we try to stand on our own. Go back to the finished work on the cross. Go and replay that imagery, that scene where he laid his life on the cross for your salvation, and then work it out. Work out your salvation with the Lord. Talk to him. Ask him. I know that this episode was kind of quick, but I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I end these episodes and I'm like, I really wish I would have had an answer for you guys. Like, I wish I would have had a clear answer, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't have a clear answer. I wouldn't be able to be here and talk about this. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are, what you guys are struggling with when it comes to relationships. Because it's hard, especially family. I think about just relationships with family. I've been talking to a couple different people just about how they want to go all in for Jesus, but they're living at home, they're living with their family, and their family aren't believers. And I wish I could say that there is an easy solution. And ultimately, it's leaning in. It's leaning in to the Lord. It's trusting his plan. It's living out your salvation. It's walking in the light of life. Asking and praying that the Lord would shine his light through you, so that they would see him, that they would see Jesus through you. And it's challenging, but I know that he is going to produce fruit from it, and that it's going to be good. It's going to be good because we serve a really good God. A really good God. Okay, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this kind of quick episode. We are going to be back next week, and we're talking about singleness. And I'm really excited because actually, I'm not going to tell you. You're just kind of going to have to wait till next week. All right. I love you guys. Have an incredible week. I'm praying for you, and I love you.